All right, everybody. So people are still checking in, but let's get started. And this is Bante Bodhidhajja. He's also a disciple of Ajahn Brahm and originally from Bodhinyana monasteries, now roaming around, traveling quite free. Senior Ajahn already, been in monastic life for
13 verses.
13 reigns, so quite a long time. And a very good friend. So visiting us here for a couple of days at Santi. Tomorrow they are going to Melbourne and they'll be teaching a retreat and also giving some teachings in the city center in Buddhist Society of Victoria. So may I invite Bante Bodhidhajja to guide the meditation this evening.
Sure, yes.
All right. Can everybody hear?
Can you hear me
Yeah,
okay?
yeah. All right.
Okay.
Okay, that'd be good.
So usually you meditate for about half an hour,
Half
is
an
that
hour,
right?
yes.
Yeah. So maybe I'll be saying a little bit more
That's okay.
than Karunika usually does, but I also like the idea of guidance into meditation, not a fully guided meditation in that sense. So just to set up the mind, to incline the mind in the right direction. But one thing that is important is we all have to learn to work with our own minds, to work with our own hearts. So whatever a teacher is offering is just an idea, is just one, it's like a suggestion. So please always understand it's not, this is the only way. So be creative, especially with meditation, because it's a feely practice, as Ajahn Brahm says. It's not a thinky practice. So you have to get to know your heart. You have to get to know what gets you going in the right way. So please adjust anything that I'm offering and discard anything that is not useful, and feel your way into meditation. And then learn from that experience. Okay, so I invite you to sit comfortably and to allow your eyes to close gently. And then, depending on what has been happening for you throughout the day, there might be some tiredness. And when that's the case, then sometimes it's a good idea to leave the eyes open just slightly, to let a little bit of light come in, to just bring some wakefulness, some brightness to the mind. And then also here, always know that when you feel really uneasy and you can't, find stability and ease in your mind, it's okay to open your eyes at any stage, if that helps to stabilize you, that helps to settle and ground you, and then you can allow them to gently close again afterwards. And then you can just allow your mind and your body to arrive by just feeling, by just knowing what's going on right now in the present moment. And then as you are doing that, to ease into what is happening, to allow your body and mind to adjust, to flow into, to tune into what is happening right now. Meditation is learning how we can rest in reality. Being here, accepting what's going on, not adding any excitement or any aversion, but just being with, being at ease, resting in whatever is going on. Listening, being receptive, and then responding kindly, wisely, skillfully. Allowing the body to sink into the chair, be supported by the mat, by the floor, in whichever way you are sitting, so you can relax into that posture. So you don't have to force or hold your body. Letting go into being supported. And that will give you this beautiful balance of being upright, being alert, being present, but also being at ease, being relaxed, being peaceful. Then you can just scan through your body to get a bit of an idea what's going on in your feet. Listening, caring, allowing that part of the body to be, giving it space. And then moving on, not getting stuck. Moving to your ankles, allowing them to be, allowing them to rest. Moving into your legs, on the right and on the left, the lower part. Checking in, caring, giving them space, letting them rest. Moving into your knees, allowing them to open up, to relax. Feeling your thighs, letting them rest, letting them be. Moving towards your hips, finding a comfortable way of having them rest on the chair, on the cushion, on the mat. Supported, cared for. No pushing or pulling. Just allowing them to be. And from there, going up into your spine, allowing the vertebrae to align on top of each other. Giving your discs the space they need so they're not squashed, but loose and free. Allowing your lower back and your belly to just do what they need to do right now, to unfurl, to relax, to be at ease. Moving into the middle part of your torso. Moving up to your chest, to your back, to your shoulders. Allowing that area to open up so that the air can come in freely, unhindered. Allowing your shoulders to drop any weight they might be carrying from the past, any anticipation or fear that might make them heavy or tense. From there, moving into the arms, left and on the right, allowing them to hang loose. Moving towards the elbow, allowing that joint to be free and easy, at ease, at peace. Moving into your arms, the lower parts. To your wrists. And into your hands, feeling your palms, the backs, the fingers, from the root all the way to the tips. And if they are not happy where they are right now, please feel free to move them in a more comfortable position so that they can rest, so that they feel supported and can be let go of. And then you might want to stretch your neck slightly and then allow it to come into a comfortable position where it is at ease. Balancing on top of the spine. And then last but not least, your skull, your head. Feel the back, feel the top, feel the sides. and relax them deeply. Being kind and caring to your temples, your ears, your forehead, your brows, your eyes, your nose and cheeks, your mouth, your jaw, and your throat. Allowing everything to be loose and relaxed, at ease and at peace. And when you relax your body in this way, it usually feels tingly and warm, relaxed and at ease. It's pleasant to be in its presence. Like we are sitting in a room here next to a warm fireplace. So cozy to sit close to the fire, to watch and experience the fire. And you don't get bored. Beauty, the warmth, the ease just pulls you in and you forget time. You forget your worries. Everything just melts away. And it's easy to stay. And that warmth and that glow is also happening in our minds. It's also happening with our breathing if we are aware of it. So see if you can just stay with that warmth, with that glow, with that inner smile that kindles, cultivates, strengthens, deepens for the rest of the meditation. And then as we are approaching the end of this meditation, you can drop in a question. How do I feel right now? What is the state of my mind? How does the body feel? Have things settled? Do I feel at ease? Is there more restlessness or tension? Whatever we encounter, so we can understand how these mental states come to be, how these sensations in the body are built. You can learn to incline in the directions which are more skillful, more peaceful, more calm and still. You can gently allow your mind, your awareness to be with your body and what's going on there. Be with your mind that hopefully has slowed down. And while you remain balanced, still and peaceful, you can turn outwards a little bit more to connect with the senses, to connect with what's happening in the world outside, to make your way back into your body, back into the room you are sitting, and back out into the Zoom meeting we are sharing together tonight. Allowing your eyes to gently open. You wish to wiggle or stretch your body a little bit to get back in touch with the body. You may do that now. But see if you can remain in this kind of receptive, listening state of knowing what's going on, but not being pulled out by the senses, by the sense objects, or even by the mental objects. Okay.
Thank you, Bhante.
Oh, no worries.
Very nice. Really, very nice.
Something different.
Yes. Yes. So once again, for anybody who joined a bit later, this is Bhante Bodhidhajja, who gave you your lovely meditation this evening. Bhante is from Bodhidhajja, a disciple of Ajahn Brahm, and we've known each other for about 16 years, I think. Quite a long time.
Yes, since
Yeah.
2009. Yeah.
9 or 8, yeah,
Mm.
since we were lay people. And I remember we used to have sometimes some Dhamma discussions, which I enjoyed very much. So hopefully maybe we can have a bit of a discussion because it's quite rare to have a discussion type thing or a dialogue as well. But today I had a couple of requests, and I was uncertain about what to talk about. When I didn't plan anything, we had a bit of a busy afternoon, and I went and rested without thinking about anything. And when I arrived here, I decided on the topic, and that is how to be comfortable with uncertainty. I was proposed, so that's what I hope to speak a few words about, and might invite Bante to contribute some words of wisdom as well, or share some of your experiences or stories. So, uncertainty is a very interesting concept, isn't it? It's nice to reflect certain and uncertain. They're both concepts, right? Everything, all words, everything, they're all concepts. I wonder whether animals think about certainty or uncertainty, right? It's interesting to think, right? It's because when we gather knowledge, when we start to sort of, get information about things, and when we feel that we can exert control, we have this perception or idea of certainty. But if you really reflect back at your own life, or life of other people, or about the world, is anything really certain? Never, right? Whatever you think it's going to be, it's at least slightly different from what you thought it's going to be. So there's so many multiple things that we don't know, and they're going to come into play. And, there is that uncertainty of like power going out right now, our internet dropping, so many things, so very many things. So it's kind of a very false idea even to believe that there is something certain, right? So, but the thing is, we want things to be certain. And where is that coming from? It is coming from wanting things to be how we like, wanting to be able to control things and expect once we sort of control things, it will go according to our plan. But because of our previous experiences and seeing, we sort of know from the back of our mind that things may not go according to the plan, and that is that feeling, that discomfort of uncertainty. Even like tomorrow, the Bantes have a flight in the afternoon or evening, and they're going to catch the train. And it's uncertain, the train might break down and you might be stuck somewhere in southern highlands where there's not much mobile signal, not that many train stations. You just don't know whether you'll arrive until you arrive, whether you will arrive or what will happen, and who will look after you. You have no money. Yeah, so you just don't know. But if you have fear about it, right? As always, life is always uncertain. But if you start to focus on that in a way that is negative, a way that is difficult, then it will be really, full of anxiety, panic, and all of that. But it's really nice if you're able to have a little bit of confidence in karma, right? Sometimes this is helpful. Sometimes we think we know what we want and what is good for me, or what is good for my family or my loved one, or for the for the society, or for your workplace, for whatever it is, right? But how can we be so sure? How many times, have we been wrong with what we wanted? We tried it out and it caused difficulties. This happens, right? Because we don't know everything about things and we can't be sure how things turn out, even what we think is going to be good. So, but rather, if we have that trust, that confidence in our good karma, by just looking at the past, things that happened, things went pretty well. If that is the case, well, we can trust, having some trust, whatever is going to be, it'll work out well. It might be for my benefit. Sometimes it's karma is what sort of drives these things at times, so it has quite a strong force as well. So sometimes we try to get in the way of our karma and maybe, interfere with something that is good that is about to happen. With our knowledge, we might interfere because we may not be as wise to understand what's going on. Because sometimes it's the difficulties that bring some incredible insights and beautiful things into our life, right? This is so true everywhere. Like, some people, when they got some kind of, life-threatening sickness, that is when they came to spirituality. And of course, they never died, they live a long life. But in the meantime, they got something really beautiful in their life. I know somebody who was doing really well with his career in his 40s, doing really, really well. He was a hotelier, very jolly person, likes all these, social things, going on holidays, parties, dancing, really into these kind of things and doing well with his life and had a good family. But something happened and he lost his job quite badly. There were some issues, what people are like in his occasion. The very people he helped sort of stabbed him in the back. This is quite normal. This happens in life. And it was quite difficult for him to get back into job. For a few years, he was jobless. It's quite difficult, of course, But what happened? So, out of desperation, because he's got sick of staying home, all the same things, and then he had some friends who used to go for a meditation class. And this is the kind of the last thing he would do with his kind of temperament. But having nothing better to do, just wanted to hang around with these friends, he decided to go to this meditation class. And then, since then, now for many years, he's been meditating. He's just come into the Dhamma. He's quite interested in learning the suttas. He go on retreats. He come and stay here also sometimes with me. He's a close relative of mine. And you see, so uncertainty of losing your job, good, bad, who knows, right? We don't know. So that's a really good attitude. So for me, since I was little, the motto of my life is whatever happens to me is for my own benefit. So even if I break my leg, my attitude is what can I learn from this? How can I grow? If you have this kind of attitude, then it takes away that pressure, that discomfort you feel. Rather, you start to become comfortable with the idea of uncertainty. First of all, uncertainty is the truth, right? That's what it is. The Buddha says this, everything is uncertain. Ajahn Chah says, not sure, right? It's a beautiful thing, actually, once you get comfortable with this idea. It's actually really nice, not sure. It's a very nice way to think about life. And that doesn't mean that you don't plan things, but the way you plan things are quite different. Actually, it's you plan things in a way that is free. Even your life is not sure, right? So you are not in your future as you plan it. So you plan it in such a way that it's going to go ahead in spite of you. Isn't that beautiful? Because when we want to be in our future and control things, that is when there's so much stress in our life. How can my family live without me? How will my job continue? How will this project come to an end if I die? All of these things is difficult. But if you plan without you in your future, if you are there, that's great. If you're not there, well, it will still continue on. This is also the way to bring up your children. Now, I learned this from my mother, who's in this room. Very interesting, right? I lost my father when I was about 13. And when I was 14, the very next year, my mother got cancer. She's still living 30 or 40 years after that, but we didn't know at the time. Yeah, at the time we didn't know. So I was only 14 and she had cancer. And of course, she's a single mom and she was still working. She had to sort of, continue working to, look after all my needs and take care of, everything, pay the bills. So, of course, so sometimes if I want to do extracurricular activities after school, I have to come by public bus. And I really didn't like it. I was growing up in Sri Lanka, and the buses are so full. It's so smelly with people sweating and so, like, uncomfortable. So I really hated coming in the bus. But, my thing was I was arguing with my mother. Don't you love me? I'm a girl. I'm your only child. Something bad could happen to me. Aren't you worried? My father was different. My father always took me in the car. Like, even my mom would argue sometimes and would want to send me in the school bus. You know what he did? He would follow the bus behind. It's so ridiculous. It was crazy. My father would drive behind the school bus to make sure I got off and went to school. So I had extreme parents. I don't know who loved me most, but you will understand who loved me really truly, right? So I would argue with my mom, saying, aren't you worried that something would happen to me? And my mom said, look, I know it is possible, yes, something could happen to you. You never know, in a bus, all kinds of things can happen to you. But at least I am here now. So if something happens to you, I'm here to look after you. But look, your father passed away last year. I too have cancer and I could die any time as well. But if you don't know how to take care of yourself, if you don't know how to go in public transport and, do all of those things, if I just spoil you all the time doing everything for you, I make you a handicap. Then if I die, what's going to happen to you? Then I'm not there and all the people will blame, you know, me, and it will be difficult. So then finally, I got the point. Actually, this is the way. So she was taking herself out of the future as she was trying to bring me up, which was very smart, very wise, right? It's a really nice way to do. I'm just giving you an example because life is uncertain. She realized her life is uncertain, don't know how she's going to live. She's been telling me this all life. I don't know, I might die anytime. So I'm very used to this idea of my mom dying anytime, and I have to deal with life myself. It's kind of nice way after a while. Things are uncertain. We don't know how things are going to work out. But if you're prepared for that uncertainty, if you trust in the flow of karma, and if you are a good person, reasonably doing your very best. You can't do better than your best. Of course, none of us are perfect, but we have good intentions and we try our best to do. So then we can trust in our karma, and things will come out. And it is these difficult times that really beautiful results come. Actually, one day Ajahn Brahmali was telling a story about a book that he read after the World War II, the level of happiness of people, whether the people were happy before the war, during the war, or after the war. What do you think? Yeah, it showed that actually during the war, while there was all these difficulties, people's happiness levels also went up in a different way. Why? Because of the uncertainty and everything, but people were looking after each other, rising up for the occasion, taking care of each other, looking out for each other. This kind of thing doesn't happen when the life is going well, right? And we probably saw similar kind of thing during COVID. And we also think maybe we were all suffering. But, I think there was quite a lot of good things that came out after that. Beautiful friendships may have developed. People may have come to spiritual path. People who never thought of learning how to meditate maybe learned how to meditate because that was the only way to deal with when you were in isolation or listen to some nice talks and things like that. There's always these good results, good things that come out. And also the people who grow in wisdom are also people who had kind sometimes difficult life, things that have gone in very different ways in their life unexpectedly. So uncertainty is not necessarily a bad thing. Whatever happens, if you have that attitude of learning from it, from growing from it, then you start to become comfortable with this idea because it's going to be uncertain. Life is uncertain. Anything that is the only certain thing. Uncertainty is the only certain thing. When we are born, our death is the only certain thing. Everything else is uncertain how it's going to unfold. So, might as well we have a good attitude and become comfortable with this idea. And I also wanted to say a story from Ajahn Brahm. I may not remember it exactly, but I remember the general idea of it. So I'll tell you my version of it. If you want to read it, you can read it in his book called Good, Bad, Who Knows? And in this story, as I remember, there was a king and he was going hunting into the wilderness, and he had also his minister, vice minister, with him and a few other people. And as they were going hunting, the king fell into one of those traps. Sometimes people put traps to catch animals, and the king fell into one of those, and he injured himself quite, like his finger and things like that. And then of course his people took him out, and then he was asking his, vice minister, what do you think about this? And he said, good, bad, who knows? And the king was pretty upset. He thought that this was such a bad thing that happened, right? He fell into this trap, injured himself, and all of that. So he was quite upset with this minister. So he pushed the minister back into the hole. And then when the minister fell down, the king asked, so what do you think about that? Now you are down there in the bottom of the hole. And the minister said, good, bad, who knows? So the king was quite mean, actually. He left his minister in the hole and he continued on by himself. Maybe it was just the two of them, I can't remember. And he continued on in the forest, and he got caught by a group of uh, people or thieves or robbers or some people, and they were looking for somebody for a human sacrifice. So they saw this fine looking person because he's a king, and thought it was a perfect sacrifice, got him in, and undressed him and tried to prepare him. And then they saw all of these scratches in his body. And they saw that he's lost one finger. So he was not perfect anymore. So they were very upset, and it was not good enough. So he sort of let him go, abandoned him. Didn't want to sacrifice him. So he escaped that. So the king was very relieved and realized, wow, if I didn't fall into that thing and injure myself and didn't lose my finger, I would have been a perfect sacrifice and I would have been dead. But it is that saved me. So he then came back and then was, to see and took his minister back. And then, if if they continued on after king had fallen down and the minister was okay, they would have taken the minister because minister would have been perfect. But because he left the minister in the hall, well, he didn't get caught up by the thieves and became a sacrifice as well. This is kind of like a funny little story to show, good, bad, who knows? We just don't know. Life is always uncertain, but if you have that attitude of making the best of what life presents to you and your willingness to grow from whatever circumstance there is, and also that trust in your karma is really, really a good way of becoming comfortable with this idea of uncertainty. And the other thing about uncertainty is also it gives you a sense of urgency, right? When things are uncertain, can we live our life heedlessly? Can we postpone, what is important until later? We can't, isn't it? When we realize, and this is why the Buddha recommended again and again throughout the suttas to do this beautiful reflection on our own death, Maranasati, yeah, contemplation of death. And it is nothing very complicated. It is not any complicated kind of meditation practice. It is okay. We hear very interesting guided meditations based on that. But the Buddha's idea was just to remember from time to time, or as many times as possible, as frequently as possible, that my life is uncertain. I could die and I don't know when. This is when it's powerful because we all know that we are going to die, but we don't know when. It could be soon. It could be before the end of the Dhamma talk, even, right? One day it could happen. I might drop dead mid sentence, or I might see one of you fall down. It could happen. And these things have happened in the past. So it is not a bad idea because once we have this idea of uncertainty, we also live our life to our best ability. That is the beautiful thing. Like while I've just come back from WA with doing quite a lot of teaching, and we did this book club session on last Saturday, and I did the book Atomic Habits. And while I was doing that, we were just talking about, there was this idea of aggregation of a small changes, 1% change can make a big difference over a period of time. And I was just suggesting the idea, maybe I did this here last talk as well, I can't remember, but I suggested, how about every morning when you wake up, just to bring up the thought, this could be my last day. It takes few seconds only, and it is not to become depressed. Rather, if it is your last day, and if you're serious about it, how are you going to live that day? Are you going to worry about who said this to who, this, that, and the other? Are you going to worry about which kind of thing you're going to buy, which color you're going to paint the house, hold on to your tenacious views? You're not, right? You want to live in a happy, good, peaceful way your last day. You don't want to, leave your loved ones behind without having settled things. If you had an argument, which we may not be able to avoid, you would still say sorry, or you might, settle things before you leave the home. Things like this, so you live quite differently. Once that idea of uncertainty, most importantly, the uncertainty of our very own life, uncertainty of the life of our loved ones and other people that are important. Like, I mean, for us, even the life of Ajahn Brahm, what would Buddhist society be like? What would our lives be like without, Ajahn Brahm? But, it's going to happen one day, and it could be even soon. We just don't know. So rather than worrying and being uncomfortable with that idea, you can see, what can I do? And what is the worst that can happen if these things go wrong? Whatever the worst that could happen. And then accepting that. What is the worst? I might die. I might die a painful death. Okay. See whether you can become comfortable with that idea. One day it would happen whether you like it or not. So, how will you prepare while I have time? How to make peace with that, how to deal with that. And this is why we start this spiritual path. In fact, this whole path is about a preparation for uncertainty. Uncertainty, the highest form being our own death, right? Even enlightenment, right? The Nibbana is, of course, the ultimate kind of ending. But in the meantime, it's still preparation for a good ending. Yeah, so when you look at the spiritual path, and if you're putting in good courses, then you can start to become comfortable with this idea. In fact, you will become very happy when things are uncertain. There is also possibility for change, for something even better to happen, because it's not that uncertainty is always bad or bring negative things. It's because of uncertainty, some really positive things can happen in our life. If everything was sort of set in stone, then then it can be difficult as well. In fact, certainty or permanence could be problematic. Yeah, then there is no way out. Actually, we are stuck. So that uncertainty is actually quite beautiful when we have the right attitude about it. When we have, when we are able to trust in the process of what unfolds and prepare ourselves to receive it with kindness, receive it with gentleness, receive it with wisdom, then we can receive things also with equanimity, with understanding. So this is why we grow in our spiritual journey. This is why we do the practice, so that we can take these things in a good way as it happens. And the last thing I would like to say for this part of the talk is it's always helpful to have good mental and physical energy. When you are in a good mood, even things fall apart, you are able to deal with it much better. But if it is a grumpy day, your energy levels are down, you are already not feeling in a good way, and then when things starts to fall apart, it becomes unbearable. That is where we have that fear, that difficulty of things becoming really difficult for us, that we will be in pain, others will be in pain and difficulty. But if we have good, if our heart is good, our mind is good, if we are at peace, if we have enough energy mentally and physically, a lot of joy, a lot of goodness in our heart, then even when things are going wrong, things are difficult, things are painful, we are still going to be able to bear up easier. We are able to be patient with it in the right way, with right understanding. So growing in our right view is incredibly helpful. Right view brings so much peace. That is when you can align your view with the way the world is. So that is part uncertainties very much that. And then when you have this, energy in your mind and body, then you are really prepared to face life as it comes. You're ready to receive life as it presents itself. So no need to fear. Instead of, you can become more and more comfortable with life. So I also would like to invite Bante to add a few things to this topic, which is quite a broad topic, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
but you've covered it really, really well. I've been sitting here thinking, oh, I could say that and I could say this. And it's like, oh, no, she already said it. One thing that I remember that you basically covered, but also that one of my early teachers was saying, who is also connected to this place and to Australia, which is Ayya. She was reflecting on certainty as well, and how we wish to have this certainty, and how we invest into like insurance, and we want to make sure that we're going to be fine. And she said, you know, we invest so much money into this, that's why there is all these huge buildings and these huge firms that try to give us that safety, that security, that basically is not possible, because it's something we're investing in the outside world. It doesn't mean that those things don't have any value whatsoever, but it's very, very limited. And we know that in Australia and around the globe now, with so many disasters, with so many difficult situations that we face, where you know, the insurance companies are starting to pull out because they say the risks are too high, and then you have to, you know, pay so much that you can't even afford it. So you start to realize that that is the wrong place to invest in. The only certainty that we can have, to some degree, again, even there it's uncertain, but that's what Karunika has beautifully described, is our own hearts, is our karma, is how we respond. And that's sometimes what I like to call our respond ability. Because responsibility is one of those words which often kind of rests on our hearts and our shoulders in a very, very heavy way, because we are starting to realize, oh, you know, I would like to influence this and I would like to influence that. But the more wisdom we have, the more we understand that we don't actually have that control. So you were reflecting about you being a child, and me having been a primary school teacher in the past. Of course, as parents, we have a little bit more responsibility initially, because we have a vulnerable little human being that is there, that we try to take care of to our best ability, try to teach, try to protect. But then if we are not skillful with that, we carry on with this protection and kind of way of giving them a feeling of safety, which is basically impossible to achieve in the world. And when they are wise, like you were describing, they have this understanding that I'm not going to be here at some stage. I have to teach this little being. I have to trust this little being to make mistakes, to learn from those mistakes, and to grow, and to be able to respond to whatever life will be throwing at that being over a period of time. And so once I came out, kind of said, okay, this is the way where we can't have any certainty. Where do we have certainty? Certainty is if we invest in the right things, and that is the spiritual path. That is our own hearts, and that is our responsibility of how do we react, how do we respond, rather, to those things that do arise. And that's something we can do. It's not always going to happen unless we are completely enlightened and all the defilements have been cleared out of the heart, and it's clear that certain things can't happen anymore because those defilements have gone. So the certainty grows and we can invest into that, so that we know no matter what will arise, that we have an even, a balanced heart, that we have the Brahma Viharas. Sometimes when we talk about, you know, enlightened beings and what they are like, some people think, oh, they're going to be vegetables and they're going to have no feelings whatsoever. But they do. But they are not those kind of fickle feelings. They're not those feelings that kind of blindly react to the world. It's not like a reflective response of unwholesome habit patterns that have accumulated over time. It's just this natural response and this natural flow of understanding, basically. And out of understanding always flows acceptance, always flows care. I often call metta unconditional acceptance.
Beautiful.
And that's when you really understand a situation, then how can you get upset? How can you get angry? How can you get irritated? Because you actually know that it couldn't be any other way. It does mean, it doesn't have to always go in a way that is uncomfortable for you, but that is one of the possibilities. So you are at ease with that. You're at peace with that. And you wish it to go the best way possible. But you know the limitations that are there in the world. And that will give you compassion. That will give you care. So when things go wrong, you don't blame yourself. You don't blame other people. You don't blame the world. Because as Karunika and also, Ajahn Brahm says, you can't expect certain things from life. But if they don't deliver, it doesn't mean that we have to get angry, that we have to try to force them into what we have expected, but that we can actually be kind. That when there is hurt, when there is friction, when there is things that are going wrong, when we get angry and irritated, we actually make it more wrong. We put more pressure on something which already has pressure. So we learn to react in that way. And then we also, or respond, I should rather say, in that way. And then also mudita. So we don't lose perspective. We understand that there is some things that we might not like, some things that don't agree with, what we expected. But there is so many other things that actually work out in the right way and that can actually disappear. So they are created and they can create some uncomfort and some things that we don't like, but they also have the ability to change and to disappear again. And we can help, we can learn from them, we can rise to the occasion, and we can again develop those beautiful qualities in our own hearts, that when more of these things are going to come later down the track, then we have the skills and the means to also see the beauty of anicca, to also see the opportunity, and to also, as I already described, when there is a disaster, so you don't have an insurance, or you invested in the insurance and it doesn't cover whatever you thought that you had insured for, because they have all these paragraphs to make sure, that they just give you what they can afford, basically. But if you only invested in that, and you didn't invest in your own resilience, you didn't invest in friendship, you didn't invest in generosity in your own life, then it's not so likely. Sometimes you're lucky and there might be some kind people or some karma from the past, so you will actually receive from the community. But these are the things that, no matter what is going to happen, are going to be really, really helpful, because they don't depend on all these worldly things. When we are here for each other, we don't really need that much. It's enough to be there for each other. And then when more people come together with that attitude, then we can actually make use of so many resources that otherwise would be wasted on one or two people. But if we come together and share, it's like what we do in a community here, in a monastic community, in a family, in a country, whatever it might be. If we come together, and that very often happens in a situation when things have gone wrong, so to speak, if they're going right, everyone is trying to get as much as possible, and there is never enough resources, and some people have too much and some people have too little, and then something happens, and that whole way of thinking about it, of I want to get, and I want to make sure I'm going to be all right. If we would be thinking about how can we all be all right in that situation, not just when things go wrong, actually when things are okay as well, then there is enough to be shared around. So this idea of scarcity is very often just happening in our minds and in our hearts. But actually there is enough to go around. Yeah, anyway, that's a few things that come to mind.
Also, while you were talking, I was thinking, Do you see a difference, even a slight nuance between the idea of uncertainty and impermanence?
Right.
How it is used?
Well, uncertainty always has to do with the self. It has to do with someone who has a certain expectation
Right.
and wants to have certain things to be certain.
Exactly.
And if that is not there, then we are in the flow of anicca. Then we are the flow of nature. You know, I mean, as you were pointing out, an animal doesn't have that concept.
Exactly.
It lives in the moment, it lives in the day. It just enjoys the resources that are available. And when they're not available, I mean, it's not outside there going like, oh no, it's raining again and 4 degrees. I mean, come on, can't we get this right? We need some heaters here and, you know, some warm puffer jackets. They just bear with it. They have patient acceptance. They don't have all these crazy stuff happening in their minds that we have. And what we don't realize is because we have all that stuff happening, we actually waste a lot of that heat that we could keep inside to keep us warm. So if animals get in that situation, they shut up, they slow down, they gather their energies, and they don't waste it. And we as human beings, we go into, you know,
Panic mode.
overdrive and panic mode, and we basically become a heater for the environment rather than keeping the heat inside. So the anicca is just kind of like a flow. And that's the beautiful thing in nature, because we monastics live in nature. Even if you reflect on a tree that doesn't have consciousness, but it just stands there. It uses the resources that is there. And sometimes I almost kind of imagine, I know it's probably not that way, but that it is just standing there, just watching, just enjoying, just flowing with the conditions rather than trying to oppose them and, you know, trying to move. That's what we do, isn't it? When suffering arrives, we don't like it, so we move. Why don't we stay put? Why don't we understand what is going on? And why don't we bend and sway with the winds that are coming? You know, have you ever seen a tree run away and go somewhere else and say, like, I don't like it here? And then they are in a different spot. And then they go like, this one is not so nice either. I'd probably go back there. You know, they just stand their ground. And that's what basically Buddhism teaches us, to stand our ground, to sit our ground, but not in terms of like, but with a flexibility, with a resilience. And anicca is just how it is. It's nature. The body does fall apart, sometimes slower, sometimes faster. The good thing is that the body actually has some ability to heal itself. But again, what do? We tell it, do it this way, don't do it that way. No, it's too late, it's too early, you have to deliver. We push it, we pull it, and then it can't even heal. We create so much more friction and tension when something pushes. We push against. Rather than learn to be with it. I don't know, did that answer the question?
No, it is. It gives people an idea to reflect. I mean, I always like people to have some homework.
Yes.
Just to see, because these are concepts, and how do you relate to these two different words? They are two different words. Like when you say it's uncertain as opposed to it's impermanent, the feeling you get is different, right? When you say uncertain versus it's impermanent, there is some kind of a feeling that is a bit different. When you really go into it, you will see, because you tend to make more peace with impermanence, the idea. Because when you know things will change, I'm sick now, but this sickness is not permanent. It will get better. this too will pass. The idea that is also coming with impermanence, with change. That has that. When you say uncertain, it always is like it has a feeling of it's like not how I want it. I might be upset. But when it's impermanent, it's slightly different the way we think about things. In fact, the idea of impermanence, when you really, really get into it, it is very soothing. To know that nothing lasts forever is a beautiful feeling. Permanence is actually difficult. Imagine if our lives, if we were mortals, if we lived forever and ever and ever again, my goodness, that would be difficult, living this life like that. It is great that at some point that we die and start all over again. I mean, it's not great, but, of course, complete ending would be better, but not complete lasting. Living forever is going to be difficult, and with other things as well. So the idea for me, at least, this sabbe sankhara anicca, all these conditioned things are impermanent. Whatever comes to be, like whatever arises, passes away, is such a cooling, soothing idea for me. So I like this uncertainty so very much that once you train and grow in this, the Dhamma, what used to bring you difficulty actually starts to cool you down, and you get the right perspective. Like Bante said very beautifully, like the acceptance of this idea, the reality, uncertainty, it settles us down. It's really beautiful because that's what it is. The best we can do is acceptance. But acceptance with metta, this is like kanti, the word kanti. Kanti paramang tapo titika, the Buddha said. Patience, endurance is the highest of the spiritual practices that is there in the Dhammapada. But the idea, the word kanti always comes with metta. Kanti, metta, they go together. So you are not patient, gritting your teeth. When is going to pass away? When is going to change? When am I going to get better? It's not like that. It is with wisdom, with acceptance, with kindness, the metta. If you can do like that, actually, it's much better. So this is how we develop. Like, you prepare your heart for that impermanence, for uncertainty, with a loving, kind heart. That can only come as you build up your energy, mental energy or meditation, and then it is a very different feel. This idea of uncertainty, you'll be very comfortable with it. Yeah.
I think one of the problems we have in the world is that we are taught that we have to figure things out.
Right.
And that we have to fix stuff.
Mm.
But is that the case? I mean, I can't remember who it was, but it was maybe Ajahn Sujato, I think, who said, life is unfigure-outable, if that is even a word. And if we get used to that, then we go much more with the flow. It doesn't mean that we are a doormat and that we don't do anything. Initially, yes, to be able to see what's going on, but then we do have an influence. We do have certain conditionings that we do pick up over time, and when we are exposed to these beautiful teachings, that changes something in our own hearts. And then the way we interact with the things that are starting to happen, but we interact in a way that we flow together. And we also have an influence on the influence. And that will go down a certain track. But we are not trying to say like, no, you're completely wrong, you have to go this way. And we try to channel the water completely in a way where it doesn't take into account the force of the water, and then it will break the banks. But it doesn't mean, I mean, in the Dhammapada as well, it says, we have to build channels to channel that water. But we have to do that with wisdom and with understanding what is possible and what is not possible. And we have to live in harmony with the things that are coming our way. So, yeah, it's sometimes a little bit more subtle than we actually think. It's like, I sometimes describe it as a dance, as different conditions coming together. And one of the mistakes we make is because we understand and we think in, it's wrong, of course, but we think the self is the thing which is in control. And then that we have to invest everything in that self, and then the self will take care of it and we will be fine. And that's not the case, because even that self is conditioned. It's just one part of the story. It's one factor. It doesn't mean it has no power whatsoever by itself, but we have to see the whole picture of all the different things that are coming together. And then, will, conditioning, choices can be conditioned in some way, but there is so many other things that also come in and are basically out of our control. And we have to accept that and understand that and be okay with that. The other thing that arose for me as well, sometimes just to practice that in meditation. Good, bad, who knows is one mantra. Another one that I sometimes practice for myself, something arises in your body with sickness or whatever, or you're sitting in meditation and, you're supposed to be peaceful and you're supposed to be great, and something comes up. And then you have this idea like, okay, now I have to figure this thing out. And to then take a step back and just have this mantra in your heart where you say, I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know.
Mm.
And it's okay to not know.
Mm.
We don't have to know. The thing is, if we think we know, then the problem starts. If we think we don't know, then we're open to an infinity of possibilities. Knowing narrows everything down and says it has to be this way because this is how I've been conditioned. This is what I think is right and wrong. And if it goes any other way, I don't know, I'm not going to like it, or I'm going to try to. But if I don't know, it doesn't mean that the wisdom I have accumulated is completely useless, but I'm also available to know and feel and understand what is there, what I'm dealing with. And then I can use the tool of wisdom, but together with whatever is there. And that's what I sometimes describe, the kind of MacGyver way of dealing with things. You come and you don't have many things, but you can't figure out. But when you step back, have enough mindfulness, allow wisdom to arise, have enough acceptance and enough time to see connections that you wouldn't see otherwise, you can make whatever it is, a bomb with a ballpoint and some blue tag and a candle and some matches or whatever it is. So we have to learn to be creative, learn to be skillful, learn to be open to unpredictability.
A good word. That's uncertainty,
Yeah.
unpredictability.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bhante. That was really nice.
Okay, sure.
So,
But maybe they have questions. I
yes,
don't know.
exactly. That's what we
I think
can
there were
say.
some chat things happening
Okay.
there.
Yeah, that was. How do we relate to impermanence with uncertainty? What? Is uncertainty a subset of impermanence? May the blessings of the Triple Gem be your guiding light. Okay. What do you
Well,
think?
it really depends. I mean, anicca is sometimes translated as uncertainty.
That's true.
And it's sometimes, as you said, not sure, unpredictability, any of these words, unreliability.
Yeah.
So, but as we probably tried to describe, if you understand that concept of unreliability, that the world is unreliable, that my point of view, unless it is right view, because it doesn't match reality, is unpredictable as well, is unreliable as well. So if you bring those two things together, it's just not going to work. Anything else that comes up? I don't know.
I need to contemplate more. I just thought about it just then.
Yeah.
But there are these slight biases. One time that this became very apparent was with a different topic, and that was, the idea of acceptance. When it one day hit home very strongly the idea of acceptance. And when I accepted something, what happens to my heart, I realize it's the same when I make peace,
Yes.
when I embrace something, or when I let go.
Yes.
There are four different words, right? You say let go, the feeling is different. You feel like you let go.
Mm.
You embrace, you feel like you really embrace. You make peace, you settle down. You accept, slightly different, but what you do and what the end result in your heart is a feeling of freedom.
Yes.
So in the same way, like when you use these terms too, like our biases and feelings how we have could be different. And it is for each one of us to sort of contemplate how we relate to. Like, whether we have the same kind of anxiety if we say life is impermanent versus when you think about uncertainty of what's going to happen tomorrow with my job. Like, how you use the word for what you use, and that might sort of group things into, maybe more negative things, whereas with some other things, it might be a positive thing because change is not necessarily bad. Change has its good things, but it's the different words we use. And I was thinking the person who asked this question, because they said they wanted to become comfortable with uncertainty, obviously, because they're uncomfortable with uncertainty, but they might be a bit more comfortable with impermanence, because the things that you associate with these words are different. Simran, go ahead, ask your question.
Ayya, is it okay today if I make a comment?
Yes.
So I just wanted to say that today's talk in particular was extremely relevant to me because what you described about that person you knew whose life has changed, or somebody whose life, like they might get sick and, get closer to the Dharmas, like exactly what I'm experiencing. So I'm pretty young, like I'm only 22, but the reason why I'm in Bali right now, not in Sydney, is because for the past 1.5 years, I previously was a nomad, just traveling the world, and I was just going out all night and doing all these fun things and, pretty fit, quite person. And then I got a medical condition and it put my whole life on hold. I went from traveling the world to there were days when I couldn't really even get out of bed. I could barely open my mouth. It's a skin condition. I had to say, Mum, can you cut up my food this small because I couldn't even open my mouth. I couldn't, even when my Dharma friends would try and give me gifts at my door, I said, can you please leave it at the door? And then my family member had to collect it for me. I couldn't even like get up out of bed, essentially. And when that happened to me, that's actually exactly what, like you said, the uncertainty creates urgency. I've been making notes, and I thought that was very true because since then I had to quit my physical job, like leave study. So many things happened because of it, and like focus on getting my treatment in this country alone. And then I am currently trying to come back to Sydney, so I can pursue my path of the Dharma. I'll quickly share this with the group chat as well. And I just today got off the phone after making a significant investment, not in insurance, but in the machine to get my treatment in Sydney. And then my boss said, oh, can I call you? I want to speak with you. So the job that I'm doing online, because I had to quit my physical job, he basically said to me, okay, probably after the next month, I think the university that I'm working for is cutting budget, so you might not have a job either. And so it felt like everything, the weight is crushing on top of me. And like, for goodness sake, can I catch a break? But honestly, what you said about uncertainty and realizing that, don't go against the karma, because I had that attitude, I barely even got upset. I just thought, you know what? Maybe this is my opportunity, like for me to get closer to the Dharma. If I'm not working, then I can really go full time, So I just wanted to say like how much I appreciate this talk and every week because like I literally sit there and say, you know what, one day like I'll be in Santi Forest Monastery if the karma is right. So yeah, thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Simran, for that beautiful story. It adds so much to the whole Dhamma talk. Thank you so much. It's always nice when it's a real life story, and coming from the audience, it's always interesting. It's real. It's happening right now. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. Sandika says, yes, definitely. What? Definitely comfortable with impermanence, but always struggle with uncertainty. There you go. So it's a good reflection because it's not about always hearing, right, from somebody else. It's much more powerful when you reflect on it, when your mind is peaceful. Like after a time when you had some meditation, when you have energy in the mind, it is so helpful to bring some of these concepts, some of these ideas, and that is when insights come up. Actually, really beautiful insights come when you just listen to somebody. Well, sometimes the way you listen, some insights can come. But also, while all of those things sort of goes inside, it settles down, and when the time is right, you reflect, and suddenly you understand it deeply, and it's quite beautiful. So, yeah, reflect on that. That's great. That's I think
I was just also reflecting on the acceptance.
yeah.
I think probably most of the people would agree that acceptance is really important and that it is helpful. But you have to feel that for yourself. So something arises and you try to meet it with as much acceptance as possible. But you have to also be honest and see how much can I actually accept and how much is there which I can't accept yet.
Yes.
Because we are not just talking about acceptance, we're talking about unconditional acceptance.
Yes.
And that's a very, very high bar. And so very often what happens is like, yeah, I'll accept that if. And then we have to ask ourselves, what are those ifs and buts? And if there is a vested interest, then we always know that there is still something that we're going like, okay, I'm going to behave myself, or I heard I should be practicing in this way, but... And so we slowly grow, and we find out where these areas are, where we can't accept unconditionally yet. And we find out which words work for us and which words bring us closer to that. So it is a practice. It's not something that you hear and it's a wisdom pill and you take it and you're going to be sweet.
Yes.
It's a gradual path, and you learn as you go and you grow, and then situations arise that you maybe thought, like, oh yeah, I thought about my death, I thought about illness, I thought about, I saw this in other people's lives, we'll be fine. And then it's on your doorstep and you go like, oh no. And just to mention one thing that really struck me, for example, with death, we all have this kind of ideas how it should go down. And we also, when someone had a loss, we are taught to react in a certain way. We're taught to say, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, and rah, 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 which is not a bad way as such, but a much better way is to ask them, how was the death of that person for you? So that the people can share with us what's going on for them, and then we relate to what they are telling us rather than the idea that we have in our own minds. And that's that one story that I remember, maybe also again, Ajahn Sujato, I think it was, who said there was one person and they lost their mum or their dad. And for some reason, that didn't bring up a lot of grief and loss and all these kind of things. So they were a bit lost and felt a little bit bad about it, but they're like, okay, that's how it is. And then their dog passed away and the world fell apart. So you have to understand that the same situation for different people with different situations at different times will bring up other stuff. So there we also have to go, I don't know. I have to feel and understand what is actually there. I have to look rather than having a certain concept in my mind and say like, oh, well, as a Buddhist, I should reply or respond in this way. Find out for yourself.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Bante.
Sorry, do we have some more? Or?
My healing, but also no, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for your questions, comments, and thank you for joining us. So take care. Goodbye. See you again next week. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for having me.